Welcome to this week's podcast of Kicking It with Kidneys with your host, Cindy Barclay. Hey, Cindy, take it away.
Well, hello out there, and welcome to Kicking It with Kidneys, a forum to discuss topics important to the dialysis community and to provide a legitimate platform for those whose voices have historically been suppressed. Now, over the past few episodes, we discussed a variety of topics: vaccine hesitancy within the communities of color, the 5 stages of chronic kidney disease, and the treatment options that are available to you. Last week, we dived into self-esteem, body image, and sexuality. In continuing with our mission to provide information to support the dialysis community, in our show today, we will provide information to help patients normalize their future. Joining with me today are my 4 colleagues: Maria Jimenez, RN and Administrator of Quality Dialysis; Rita Williams, Licensed Renal Social Worker; S. Scarborough, Master's in Business Administration and Entrepreneur; and B.J. Simone, Master's in Sociology, Health Sciences, and Research Trainer. So, B.J., what is the word on the street?
Okay, Cindy. Well, each week we ask our people on the street to answer questions about their experience with dialysis. So let's listen to what they have to say for this week's episode.
Word on the Street with Simone.
Hey, Simone. We're out here today talking to dialysis patients, and we asked them, how do you see your future now that you're on dialysis? What obstacles do you see that prevent you from living your best life? And how do you plan to overcome them? Here's what they said.
My future is, I can tell that it's going to be a little more restrictive as far as, 3 times a week for 3 to 4 hours each day. I will be unable to do things. And sometimes the scheduling can also be restrictive, whether you're first, second, or third shift. And so getting a good space is also critical, and having it not kind of take up a lot of your time. If you want to survive, you have to be very diligent in fluid intake, meals. I cook a lot at home, though. I've become a very good cook in the last few years, concentrating on this, but cooking, traveling, those kind of things really change.
At first, I had a bleak outlook, but once I started, I realized, excuse me, that it wasn't as hard as I thought it was. So I don't think I see it being that impactful on my future. With dialysis, at first it was the time constraint because I was having my dialysis done in the evenings, and I could really feel it because it affected my job, because my job is kind of overtime based. You make more money when you work overtime. And it was seriously limiting that. So that's what I felt then. But now at the time that I have my dialysis, it works out perfectly. Because the time that I have my dialysis, I'm not doing anything but sleeping anyway. So doesn't really have that big of an effect on anything. And that's the only thing that I really saw that it was affecting. Just deal with them. That's all you can do. As they come, you just have to deal with them.
Honestly, I don't see my future any different than I saw it before. I just feel like I just now have this one other thing that I have to do in order to continue to live a healthy lifestyle. So I feel like my future is just as bright as it was before the dialysis. A couple of things. The first thing would be I'm on peritoneal dialysis, which is the dialysis I do myself at home. And the having to set up a machine every night and, get hooked up on it and gauging time. Like if I go somewhere and I know I need to get on my treatment, and then the next day I have to be somewhere at a certain time, then I have to make sure that, my time is gauged correctly in order for me to get my treatments done. Sometimes I can get a little challenging and a little cumbersome and can prevent, getting some things done. And then there's the travel component. I like to travel, and when opportunities come up with me and my friends, it's that preparation for travel and having to pack the machine and set it up somewhere else and things like that. So I think those are my major obstacles.
Well, I don't see it as vibrant and bright as it once was, because the dialysis kind of limited me now to things that I could do and things I had planned on doing in the future. So it's not as bright as it once looked before. Yeah, but now that I'm dealing with the problem that I have and in need for a kidney and waiting for a kidney, like I said before, it limits me, and and waiting for a kidney it can be kind of stressful at times as well.
Well, BJ?
Yeah. Well, the theme that our participants seem to have in common is that they've all had to make adjustments, and they've had to figure out how to navigate between what they thought their future was going to be and what it actually is. But what I hear that's encouraging from all of them is that with information and discipline and planning, that any dialysis patient can have a really rewarding and good future.
So, since our topic today is planning for the future, let's take a look at 3 scenarios of how we got here in the first place. You went to your primary care physician. He's telling you it looks like you're going into renal failure, so he's going to refer you to a kidney doctor. Okay? Now, that's a good thing, because this early referral has been very beneficial in minimizing patients going on dialysis. Now, the second scenario, you went to the doctor because you were having symptoms. You weren't feeling good. You are obese. Your blood pressure is sky high. Your blood sugars are out the roof. Okay. But you turn a deaf ear to the medical advice that was given you. So I'm going to put you in the non-compliant and denial category. Okay. Now, number 3 is a bit, kind of disheartening to me. And it's unfortunate that we live in the United States of America, but many patients are seen in the emergency room for the first time. And the reason they've been feeling bad, but the reason why they haven't gone to see a doctor, is because they don't have insurance. Yeah. And everybody on the panel know that doctors don't work for free. Okay. So we got to thank God for the county hospitals. Can we hear amen to that?
Amen.
All right. Sarita, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and you, Miss Barclay? In fact, I'm doing absolutely fabulous.
What's in that glass you're drinking, Sarita? What's in that glass? I saw a glass. What you drinking? Sarita?
I don't have a glass right now, but if it was, I'd be rehydrating from the weekend.
Oh, all right. All right. All right. Okay. So, in order to plan for the future, we need a budget. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. So can we discuss some of the expenses? Okay. The cost of living, the average reimbursement from Medicare, the group healthcare plans. We need to have a budget, because you have expenses. Okay. And then you have a lot of folk on your payroll. So let's start with that. What do these patients have to look forward to, if you can call it that, after being diagnosed with this illness?
Well, Ms. Barclay, if you don't mind, I'd like to take it back to some simple basics first, because I want to make sure that our individuals are understanding exactly what's going on here. And as a preface to that, I think, Nurse Maria, you mentioned a lady that was on dialysis that was potentially expecting?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I just want to give you a note and let you know that our president has just passed the Child Care Act. And so starting July 15th, each child under the age of 5 years old will get $300 a month. And if they're between 6 and 17, they'll get $250 per month starting July 15th. And that includes children born in 2021. So that goes back to kind of the end of our conversation from last week, have more sex. But
well, all right, Uncle Joe.
That's right. Money that's on the side or that you get in addition, that's just, I mean, no requirements on that money. If you have a child, you get that money monthly?
Anyway,
you get that money monthly, and we won't cover bank accounts today, but if you have a bank account, it'll be automatically deposited in your bank account. So I want to get into what Ms. Barclay asked, which is, what is a budget? And it's really interesting because in its simplest form, it's a estimate of income and expenditures for a period of time. In most cases, whether you're in business or it's your personal, you do a budget for 12 months. So we consider income as money received on a regular basis for work or through investments. Now, I need to put a little caveat here for our listeners.
Yeah, because you're talking about investments. You know, most of us don't have no investments, but go ahead on. I'm going to let you run with that. Okay, go ahead.
Caveat is, I want to let your listeners know, Ms. Barclay, that lottery tickets, horses and dog races, and casinos are not considered investments. Okay? So let's be crystal clear.
Okay.
But Sarita, don't they have a return?
It does, but it does not fall under that category. And we're going to get to that in just a second. I don't want to take up all the time, but we're going to talk about the return.
Okay.
Okay, so now we want to talk a little bit about expenses. And the cost, expenses are costs required for something. The money spent on something. But what I like to do is break it down into 3 categories. And while your listeners are listening, they're going to have a little homework at the end of this. So grab a pen and a piece of paper because I'm going to need them to do some things so that when we get back next week, we can go into it further. So the first one is fixed expenses. And basically fixed expenses are payments that we have very little control over. They represent our legal obligations, such as your rent and your mortgage and your car note. These are things that are typically predictable on a monthly basis. Then we move into our periodic expenses. They're a little more challenging because they're similar to fixed expenses, but over a period of time. So to give you a good example about it, I kind of call it, it's an oxymoron, but I call it an expected surprise. Now, it's expected, but when the bill gets there, it's a surprise. So these are things that you may have, for example, like my property insurance. It's due every other month. But if I don't fix that across the board for 12 months, when the bill comes, I'm not prepared to pay for it. So what I'd like to advise people to do is to take the total amount and fix that as a fixed expense and not a periodic expense. That way it becomes no surprise. Okay. And the last, which is the best part, and it's really the part I like best, it's the variable expense. Now, I think it was Simone who asked about where those lottery tickets go. This is also known as your discretionary expense. It's challenging for your budget, but it's my favorite category because this is where we have all the control. These are expenses that we can influence with our behaviors. This includes,
does that influence that $2 trillion a year that minorities spend put into the economy?
Absolutely. This is your food, this is your clothing, This is your entertainment. And I think the casinos, the lottery tickets, we're going to call that entertainment, okay? The challenge with it is that it's never consistent. And so the way that I want to look at this for just a second is, how do we learn about our spending habits and our variable expenses? We do that by when we track our activity. So I'd like your listeners for 1 month to track all the expenses and categorize them according to the expenses and the subcategorization, and those being, again, the fixed, the periodic, and the variable. So what we first want to do is get people to take control of their budget by understanding where they're spending money, because that still has not gone into the cost of living adjustments and increases, and it has not prepared an individual for the costs that they may experience with their medical services once they get on dialysis. And I think you asked me that at the onset, Ms. Barclay, but what we know is that those expenses can be $1,041 per treatment for commercial insurance and $248 per treatment for Medicare insurance.
And are you talking about basically what Medicare has to pay out for dialysis services and what the group healthcare plans pay out for dialysis services? That's just an average, right?
It's just an average, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that doesn't include that 20% that they have to pay and out of pocket and all that.
That's correct.
Okay. So when you're talking about the variable, I think you went into 3 categories. So the variable expenses are usually where a lot of us live, because that's entertainment, that's the Gucci, and what's some other name brands? Gucci, and who else? Gucci,
Louis, Prada, Fendi.
Fendi. Okay. Well, and so that kind of interferes. Go ahead on, Sarita.
Well, in my neighborhood, we do the knockoffs, so that may be the flea market version, but we're not doing the real thing over here, but it still comes at a cost.
Well, I mean, it does. And the bottom line is, unless you really look at those designer handbags and dress attire, you won't know what's what. Okay. So, but as you said, that's still a variable expense, correct?
Correct.
All right. So now, if we're spending money on all of that, now we already know, based on last week's episode, you said that it was about $2,000 coming into a household. A lot of those that went on disability because of dialysis, okay, they went on disability, but I think you said it was about a little over $2,000 a month income that's coming into a home, right?
That is correct.
So if you got average mortgage, you're talking about, I guess it depends on rent or whatever, but you're paying anyway from $1,500 to $1,000 to $2,000 a month just for the mortgage, okay? And then you got your utilities, and then you have your food, and then you have the light bill. Did I say the light bill?
No, you didn't. But
we say light bill. Okay.
Did not, so yes.
All right, but I'm already at a deficit, aren't I?
Yes, you are, and that's why I wanted to start off with going back to rebuild the budget and how people need to build their budget, because we'll talk a little bit about spreadsheets maybe in the next episode or so. But you have to absolutely start trying to budget. And I think that's why you find individuals in minority communities going and getting assistance with their light bill, their gas bill, and the water bill, because it hasn't been properly planned out, yet alone planning for an illness, And yes, I think, we hear a lot about people eating healthy and living healthy, but those come at a cost. We don't necessarily have the same level of income to be able to go to the Whole Foods and places like that where you're getting organic products and things of that nature. So we find ourselves at the local grocery stores buying food that is not organic, so to speak, and all of those factor into the cost. So our individuals that we're talking to have to begin to shift their budget and plan a little bit differently. And, hopefully in additional episodes, we'll get to talk more about savings, investments, and things like that. But right now, just dealing with the basics, we need to teach them how to plan and budget properly.
Okay. Well, that's going to be a little challenging. So what we're going to do is Maria, let me ask you a few questions. Okay. So I've been told that I want you to discuss 3 of the most common concerns dialysis patients verbalize when starting. I mean, I don't know nothing. I am scared to death. I am scared shit.
Well, like you said, after your steps is you go to your PCP, they refer you to your nephrologist because your numbers don't look quite right. This is the time period where we need to be more conscientious of our health and think of reverting the disease process backwards. Unfortunately, once you're declared, a lot of things that I hear from patients, their concerns are the limitations that they have. They now have this machine that's a part of their life that they have to squeeze in, whether they like it or not, 3 times a week. So limitations with work, their work schedule, being able to vacation, leisure activities that they like to do. Usually, you have to realize on average, you've got 4 hours, 3 times a week, 12 hours a week that you have to dedicate to this machine. That's on average. There are some patients that do 3 hours and there's some 5-hour patients. Just telling you, on average. And the next thing I would say is there are restrictions on food. So it seems like everything is being taken away, from them. So I think as a nurse, it's really important once we get that patient in center, home program, PD, whatever the modality is that as a nurse, we're the first person that patient meets once they finally started. These people are in all different types of mindsets. Some people believe that, okay, my kidneys are, the doctor's telling me this, but I believe in a higher power who's going to say my kidneys are coming back. I've seen it happen. That's called acute renal failure. But most patients that I see are chronic or on it, for a long time. So as a nurse, we have to be welcoming, letting them know that it's okay, that they do have that support system. The nurse needs to also tailor their listening to being an active listener to that patient to see what their needs are, and educate them on all modalities. Again, as you talk to patients, you get to know what they, like, what they don't like, what they need, what they don't need, and you can help them with different treatment options that they might not have been told about in the beginning. You're starting here, but there are other treatment options that may, best fit your lifestyle. So basically the top things that I hear from patients are basically their limitations and restrictions. Everybody's telling them what they can't do. So we need to get together with them and tell them that it's okay and there are some things that you can do.
Okay. So Rita, what are the 3 most common areas of concern by the time the patient gets to you?
Okay.
What are they concerned about?
Well, kind of some of the reoccurring things that Maria talked about. They talk about work, they talk about transportation and insurance. That's the top 3 for me. Am I going to be able to continue to work? Yeah. Lots of people on dialysis continue to work. Some of them decide to work part-time, and that's okay too. Some decide they don't want to work anymore, that it's not going to fit into their schedule. But like Sarita says, they have to consider those budgets as well. If I'm going to not work anymore and go on disability, will that check cover all my expenses?
Let me ask you something. Sometimes patients want to continue to work, but they're unable to. Let me get into this about employment and employers.
Okay.
Okay. They want to continue the work, right, but maybe the employer feels like they're taking too much time off. Okay. Okay. That the productivity is not there. I don't care if you've been there for 40 years. You got to remember we're in corporate America. So so the deal is here. If you can't perform, what happens? What's that song, Hit the Road, Jack? Okay. I mean, it's just that simple. Right. And we're keeping it real.
Right. Well, and there are laws that protect our patients. There's the Civil Rights Act. There's the Rehabilitation Act, the Americans with Disability Act, that all protect you and your job. I mean, some employers may have to go ahead and, allow for you to have special accommodations made for you. So that's part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So they may have to make what's called reasonable accommodations for you to be able to work. So, and you need to talk to your employer And if you are working at a specific job and it requires a lot of lifting and you can't lift a lot, you need to talk to them so they can make those accommodations.
I like what you're saying, but you know, y'all,
I know
some folks go to work.
Yeah.
You know, they wasn't doing no work before.
Right.
You know how that goes. Now, come on, we can stop this now. Don't act like everybody goes to work is basically loyal and excited to be there. Okay. Now, the bottom line of it, if you were acting up before, how many employers do y'all expect for people just to stand by and say, okay, I'm going to stand by your side?
Yeah, well, I mean, and they need to go ahead and evaluate you if they see your productivity coming down, because you don't have to go in there and tell them, hey, I'm on dialysis. I mean, you don't have to. Now, once it starts affecting your job performance, they may ask, hey, what's going on? You know, is there something wrong with you? Or, you know.
It affects that overtime. Like the patient says, you know, his treatment time, he's been blessed enough to have a time where he can still work and get that overtime that helps contribute financially to the household. And there's some patients that don't tell their employers at all that they're a dialysis patient because they're afraid to lose their job, or based off of those accommodations, you may have to take a pay cut. You can't be out in the street like you used to. We could still give you a job, but it's going to be less money.
Wait, did you say a pay cut?
It's a pay cut. Your accommodation may require a pay cut.
Sarita.
Well, I have a problem with that. I mean, you playing with my money and you in my pockets, Nurse Maria. So I know we can't do pay cuts over here. That's just not even an option.
Oh, okay.
Well, then like Maria said, then we need to follow, going and doing our treatments completely, following our diet so we can perform at our best. You know, that's a motivation. Money is a motivation for all of us.
So BJ, in your opinion, what are the 3 social areas most affected by individuals with chronic illness? Okay. And how can that be managed? They're overwhelmed, with everything coming at them. What is your recommendation? Because I mean, it's difficult at that point. It's even difficult later on because you don't have any concrete. I mean, you don't, when you're working, you're sure it's like, oh, well, I know I got $50 coming in this week, but you don't know when you're going to be laid off. You're just there, just living in fear.
Absolutely. But I'm going to have to take a page from Sarita and mention something because I'll forget it. Sarita, I once heard very early on, speaker said, if your output is more than your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. So
all right,
people
I like
remember
that.
That's a good one.
But in answering Cindy's question, the key word that all of us have mentioned on some level, and it really does affect you socially, is change. All chronic illness involves some type of change. Even in the best of circumstances, change can be stressful because of the part that you don't know. It's the uncertainty, which you mentioned, Cindy. There is nothing that you're really certain about. And for dialysis patients early on, it's like Maria says, they don't know. And people are afraid of what they don't know. So the stress, the depression, the anxiety, that really comes from people not having information and not knowing what to expect or having unrealistic expectations. So the first suggestion is to get as much information as you can, as early as you can, from as many sources as you can. Talking to other dialysis patients, talking to your team providers will go a long way to alleviating any of these negative feelings. The second thing is what's significant for dialysis patients is making a schedule of their social activities around their treatment schedule. And as we've heard from our people on the street, that involves employment, travel, recreation, anything that has a time commitment is going to be affected. As Maria said, 3 times a week, 3 to 4 hours per session. But I think what is important for dialysis patients to remember is that because this is a constant, that it really can be a benefit by providing some structure and discipline in other areas of their life that maybe they never had to deal with before. Changes in social relationships. And that kind of hits a little bit what we talked about in our last session. Managing a chronic illness can be overwhelming at times, and that can also be a difficulty in our social relationships. And one reason is because any illness is going to divert attention from your usual activities. And so that's something that people have to plan for. So you plan for the change. That's another tip. And the final thing is social roles tend to change when people are managing a chronic illness. People may need more assistance. We heard about one of our previous people on the street who said, I need more assistance with transportation now. For example, the person in the family who was always the go-to person, they were always the independent one, everybody went to them. Well, now they're in a situation where after a dialysis treatment, they might be tired. They might not be able to cook the meal for that day. And every dialysis patient situation is different. So the key part here in managing these changes in the social role is communicating, having our patients talk to their family members and tell them what they individually need, and also tell them about the condition so that people, when you're going out to the restaurant or you're going out to a party, your friends understand, okay, you have some limitations, you have some restrictions, but like Maria says, that doesn't have to mean that you don't have fun or you don't have positive things to happen in your life. Maintaining those activities as much as possible and those connections to things you used to do, that's important. But also, the last thing is to open up the possibilities of new experiences and be open to new relationships. Some things are going to change and it doesn't have to be bad.
Okay, so let's do a recap right quick. Maria, what does the dialysis patients, I've been diagnosed, my doctor, what happens from there? He tells me where to go. What do I get an appointment? Tell me how that's supposed to
You should have, once it's time to start dialysis, you should have been referred to a clinic.
Okay.
For whatever modality it is. When you show up there, you are initially greeted by a registered nurse who will do their initial assessment on you. They review your medications, they review your lab work with you and what your treatment plan is. At that time, when you go into that first initial visit, you need to be prepared. You need to be on time. Everything with dialysis is time now. You have to, make time for this. So time is going to be a big word in your life. Be prepared mentally and physically as well. But during that time period, that's the best time to get all your questions answered. Come in there with the notepad.
Wait a minute. What if everybody's too busy? I get to the place, they gave me a time, they told me.
Well, that should not be.
Okay. So
I can tell you about what I do as a nurse at Quality Dialysis and what should be done universally for dialysis.
Because these people are now on your payroll because you're paying them. So good customer service is what you should expect, right?
Should expect. You should expect that. So with that initial meeting, you should have all your questions answered. They should tell you about all your modalities. It should be an open dialogue with that nurse in the very beginning. Then you meet your treatment team, which includes your social worker or your dietitian. And of course, your nephrologist is always there at the top. They're the ones that's, given the orders for your care.
Okay, Rita, transportation. Transportation, I'm having problems. I mean, am I going to be able to pay for all this? Are you going to tell me? Because now I'm concerned. I might be working actively and I may not be working. Can you tell me the difference of my benefits and what I'm expected? What are you going to tell me about? Because all of these things are on my mind, but I may forget. You as a social worker, what is your obligation? What is your responsibility as far as bringing me up to speed.
Sure. I give you the options, what are available to you. As Maria says, you are an individual to me. So I look and see what your support system looks like. If you are able to work still and you're able to drive, so you drive yourself to the dialysis unit. If you're not able or medically not able, you look into your social support network, which is your family and your friends, your church members. Can they give you a ride?
Everybody's
and if not,
working. Hold up.
Everybody's working. Then we're going to go to the insurance. See if the insurance that
they
you
don't
may
pay
have.
For none of that.
All right. Well, then we're going to go to the bus system. Is there a bus system that provides a ride to the dialysis unit? We're going to look into some of the suburban areas. Some of the dialysis centers, we're not just talking about our area, all areas. Some of the dialysis units may have transportation. You may need to look into your rural communities. You may look through their county services. And then you may go to the charitable donations areas and your churches and see if they provide. So we're going to look at your ecosystem or your map or whatever you want to call it, whatever services you have. We're going to try to make sure you're able to come to and from dialysis 3 times a week. So we're going to find some transportation for you.
And a lot of times, poor Rita, the social worker, when they get to the social worker, they think that money grows on trees. And Rita's going to go to the back of the facility, get the money off of the tree and bring it to them. They have to realize that this is qualification for certain things. So budget, like Sarita was saying, is very important initially because you don't know what you're going to qualify for. Your social worker can help you with that, but you have to be financially cognizant, when you're starting with dialysis.
And like Maria said, nothing is free in this world. We know that. That's why it is important, like Sarita says. And sometimes I have to sit down with a patient and do a budget because they've never had a budget before. They're like, what do you mean I have to pay for the bus? I thought I got it free. Well, some people may qualify for that, but you don't. Individually, you don't. It's going to be $1.25 for each ride. So you need to have $2.50 every day.
Depending on what state you're in.
Right. It's, of course, differently, state to state. But Sarita's very right. That budget is critical. It is something our patients need to learn about.
Well, Sarita, I mean, what is your recommendations? I didn't have no money before I started dialysis. And my mother used to say, it was an old saying, well, I used to sleep sometime when I was young, and my mother didn't like laziness. She's coming there sometimes to hit me. She says, oh, well, you didn't have a damn thing when you went to sleep and you ain't got nothing when you're waking up. So, okay. So how do I handle that, Sarita? I mean, I didn't have a lot to begin with. Now, I don't have much of anything. How do I handle it?
I think that what you have to look at are the requirements, especially if you're Medicare primary. You're going to have to look at the requirements as to how much additional income you can make, number one, to stay within the requirements so that you don't mess up your benefits. And then 2, you're going to have to look at all of the things that you can do from home. There are a lot of, especially because of COVID, there are a lot of work from home things. So if a person is fluent in typing, or they can do some answering phone calls in a quiet environment or things of that nature, they can pull in a little extra income as long as they stay underneath what will affect their Medicare, or their Social Security, or what have you.
Okay, so but Jay, how am I going to prepare for this? Do I just make up my mind? It's new. How am I going to get into this? How am I going to decide mentally? How am I going to cope with this? What are some of the steps that I need to do?
Okay, well, quite simply, Cindy, you got to plan for those changes, and the panelists have really given a road map on how to plan for these changes financially, socially, physically. Keep listening to Kicking It with Kidneys.
Okay, all right. So we have our segment questions here today, ladies. Now, I'm not sure what Adam meant by this, but maybe you guys can help me out. Adam says, how long can you miss taking your blood pressure medicine before it starts affecting your sex life? I get that has something to do with our show last week. How long can you miss taking your blood pressure medicine before it starts affecting your sex life? Maria, did you understand that? Because I thought it was just the opposite.
I don't know about missing. Right. So it's usually when you're taking your blood pressure medicine, remember, With erectile dysfunction, it's all about blood flow to the genitals, the genital area. So blood pressure medications can kind of, decrease that. That's when you have the issues. When you start taking blood pressure meds, you have the issues with erectile dysfunction.
Right. And you need to take that medicine, because if you continue as you are, you're going to get calcification down there. And I've seen a couple of those.
Now, Cindy, what is this calcification you're speaking of?
You calcification. Not really, you don't embarrass me, but I'm going to have to say it anyway. Maria, what is calcification?
Oh, you don't have to say it.
Because you've seen it.
What it's basically where you get these calcium deposits in places that shouldn't be, and they take over, and it interferes with the flow as well. And you're gonna have problems with well, let's move on to the next question. Okay. I actually got embarrassed. I can't believe it.
Sorry.
Okay.
Barclay, I didn't quite understand that. Can you repeat that, please?
You know what, Sarita? You know what? I'm going to send you a map of a penis and the effects of calcification, and then we can talk about it next.
Oh, I got the picture now. I got the picture.
You got the picture.
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a good one, is it? All right. So this is from Adam. Adam, no. The next one is from Alejandra. This is for you, Rita. She says, my mom is a legal resident, but my dad is not. He purchases insurance from his job. Most recently, he lost his job. Is my mother going to be able to get her dialysis?
Well, Alejandra, we're going to look for a place to take you, because your mom's not going to be without a dialysis. So we're going to find out if she qualifies for Medicaid, Medicare. We're going to see, our county hospital will definitely take her, but she's not leaving our unit without having anything. I am going to work as hard any other social worker would do that, like Maria says. Yeah. So we're going to find, there are units that can take you. There are, programs that they're out there, Medicare, Medicaid.
So mother is legal.
Yes.
Father is illegal.
So, right.
So with mother being on dialysis, she's entitled to Medicare as a legal citizen.
Yeah.
So she should not have any interruptions in her service. Now, I don't know what modality of dialysis she was on.
Yeah.
The modality may change, but she should still be able to continue to get treatment.
So she said here, she has never worked to put hours into the system. So
she may not qualify for the SSI or SSID, but she will qualify for the Medicare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and this one is for me. It says, Cindy, the 3 types of love are eros, agape, and philo. I think you forgot agape. Well, thank you for reminding me of agape, because I think that's the love that comes from up above. I don't have that kind of love when you're talking about relationships. If he's not right, then he needs to go. Okay?
What did you say? Love don't keep the lights on.
Huh. Well, who sang the song? It takes a fool to learn that love don't love nobody. Who was that? Y'all don't even remember this. Okay. Well, we're gonna kind of sum everything up. BJ, what are your final responses?
Wow, this has been a great show. Future progress depends on present planning.
Okay. We got to save Sarita for last. Maria.
I'm going to add to that. If you plan in the future, you don't end up starting dialysis in the hospital on the healthcare professional's terms. If you start early, it can be on your terms, how you want it. You won't be crashing. Remember that you dialyze to live. You do not live to dialyze.
I like that. Rita.
I encourage our patients to keep talking to the care team. We are all on the same team. We're going to continue to give out information as it comes up. There's no need for surprises. If something's coming up, talk to us. That way we could, face it ahead, and we don't have to worry about those surprises. We're going to try to get those resources that you need. Okay. So keep open communication with your team members.
That's great. And last but not least, Sarita.
Well, Ms. Barclay, I always come from a different perspective, and I want to let you know that today I'm really immensely grateful for your listening audience. I think you have such a wonderful audience. I went through and looked at some of the recommendations. I could only take 2 because of the time constraints. So the first person I want to recognize is 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞69, who said the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So I want to let 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐶69 know that I have some red beans and rice cooking. And as soon as you let me off the line, I'm going to get with that hot water cornbread. So I'll give 𝐥𝐢𝐤 an update next week. But last week's winner, I have to give a big shout out to her. Now, I'm wearing this hat in tribute to her because I had to go.
No. You wearing that hat because you didn't want to get your hair done. Okay.
Oh, no, ma'am. No, it got messed up on this venture, but I had to go all the way to the Caribbean paradise. So let me give a big shout out to Mama Juana. And I want to let her know I found the Fountain of Youth. And I went over there and I picked up the product. Can't name it because we don't recommend products. I got some sunshine and some vitamin D. And so to Mama Juana, I want to say, thank you.
My final response is the maker of all things loves and wants you. All right. Well, we hope you've enjoyed our show today, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Kicking It with Kidneys.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Kicking It with Kidneys with your host, Cindy Barclay. See you next week. The views expressed on this podcast are educational and opinion-based. These are not medical doctors.
Be sure to catch us on social media on our website, kickingitwithkidneys.com, also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.